The M2 is the smallest car in BMW's motorsport lineup, certainly one of the most important. But here's what makes that uncomfortable. It arrived late, which raises a question. Why did it take this long to make the M2? Because BMW had the engine, the platform, they also had the philosophy. But yet, for years there was a gap in the M lineup that nobody seemed to want to talk about. Because when the M2 finally showed up, it didn't feel new. It felt late, just a little late. Compact, rear-wheel drive, proper M power. The kind of car BMW already knew how to build. And yet, it stood out. Not because it did more, but because it did less. Which doesn't make sense. So the real question isn't what the M2 is, it's why BMW waited so long to build it. But here's where I start to have a problem. When I look at BMW's M lineup, before the M2, it looks complete. You've got the M3, the M4, the M5. On paper, everything is covered. But the more I look at it, the more it feels like something's missing. Not power, not performance. Something smaller, simpler, more connected. And the strange part is, I don't think BMW missed it. I think they moved away from it, which raises a bigger question. Because if BMW already understood this, why build everything else first and only come back to it now? Now, what's surprising is that if you go back far enough, you start to realize that this isn't a new problem. It's something BMW had already solved, just not in the way you'd expect. The BMW 2002 wasn't about power, but it was about feeling. Light, simple, direct. You didn't think about it, you just drove it. And guess what? It worked, which makes this lateness harder to ignore. Because if BMW already understood this, why did they move away from it? And this is where it doesn't add up. The M5 shows up in the mid-80s. The M3 follows shortly after. Then decades pass. The M4 arrives in the 2010s. Bigger, faster, more expensive. So where's the smaller one? Because for years, it's just not there. There's a gap in the lineup that nobody at BMW seems to want to talk about. And then mid-2010s, the M2 finally shows up, very late, and suddenly everything makes sense. This isn't just another M car, it's the one that should have been there first. Smaller, lighter, more accessible, the kind of car everything else moved away from, the kind of car the M badge was built around to begin with. And that makes the question sharper than ever. If this is the car that feels right, the one that fills the gap, why wasn't it there all along? The M2 G87 launches in 2016, but to understand what it actually fixed, you have to go back, because by then, M cars had gone in a different direction. Bigger, faster, more expensive. And somewhere along, something got lost. So the M2 shows up with a specific job, not to impress, to reconnect. And straight away you can see it. 3.0-liter turbo inline 6, around 365 horsepower, rear-wheel drive, no excess, which raises the question, why build it this way when everything else was doing the opposite? And then you drive it, gosh, it's compact and alive, because it works with you. And that's what was missing, connection, which is why the M2 doesn't feel new. It feels right. And if they got it this right the first time, what happens when they push it further? But I mean, if the original M2 already got it right, why replace it? In 2018, BMW does exactly that. The M2 competition takes over, which already tells you something, because this isn't a tweak, it's a decision. The S55 engine, straight from the M3 and the M4. Over 400 horsepower, faster, sharper, on paper, better in every way. So what's the catch? Because once you drive it, something shifts. The power arrives quicker, more immediately. The car asks less of you, and that sounds like progress, until you feel what it replaced. The OG made you chase the power, this one hands it to you, and that's the trade. More performance, slightly less involvement. Still the car that fills the gap, just filling it differently, closer to the bigger M cars, but still holding on to what made it special. And that tension is what makes this version matter, because BMW isn't just closing the gap anymore. They're testing how far they can push the formula, which raises the only question that matters now: what happens when they stop adding and start taking away instead? So here's the real question. What happens when BMW stops adding and starts removing? In 2020, they answer it. The M2 CS, same engine, more power, but that's not the point. 40 kilograms gone, carbon bonnet, carbon roof, forged wheels, each one a marginal gain. Together, a completely different conversation. And suddenly, everything sharpens. Not just faster, clearer. You push it, it gives something back. Not performance, involvement. And here's what makes that uncomfortable. That's exactly what the OG had, what the competition quietly moved away from. And now, with less, it's back. The CS didn't add its way to this feeling, it removed its way there, which raises the only question worth asking. If taking away brings the car closer to what it's supposed to be, why did BMW spend 2 versions adding? Because the CS isn't a new direction. It's the clearest version of the original idea, the one that fills the gap completely. And once you see that, the next question becomes impossible to ignore. If this is what the F87 could be at its best, what happens when BMW decides to replace it? And this is where it really starts to bother me, because by now, the pattern is obvious. Every version of the M2 builds on the same idea. Small, rear-wheel drive, just enough power to make it exciting, but not so much that it takes over. And every time they refine it, it gets better, not different, better, which tells you something important. This isn't a lucky formula, it's a clear one, a repeatable one. And that's exactly what makes this uncomfortable. Because if the idea is this clear, if it works this consistently, why did it take so long to get here? And more importantly, now that they have it, what are they going to do with it? So here's the question. If BMW understood this formula, why did it take so long? And then you see it, the M2 G87. And this is where it clicks. This isn't BMW experimenting, this is BMW deciding. Over 450 horsepower, wider, stronger, but still rear-wheel drive, still compact, still driver first. They're not choosing anymore, they're combining. And that answers it. It took this long because BMW had to push everything else to realize what actually mattered. And once they did, they came back properly, which is why the M2 sits differently now. Not the fastest, not the most expensive, the most complete. And that's what makes it matter. Because this doesn't feel new. It feels like the right idea that finally found its moment. If you want to see how BMW is making the same kind of decision with design, the M4 grille video is next. Go watch it.